Good morning, Port St. Lucie. Welcome back to another episode of PSL Daily Download, your first stop to all things real estate in Port St. Lucie. Today, we got a lot of important stuff to cover from Fed Chairman Jerome Powell. They went ahead and announced that they will not be increasing or decreasing the rates, basically leaving them unchanged. And we're going to go over the article that kind of touches on timelines, which I'll kind of go over here in a minute. Now, before we jump right in, a couple things. Number one, I'm going to change the format a little bit. We're going to start with the article and work our way backwards. So we'll see how that plays out. And secondly, we're going to see how the decision has affected mortgage rates, which is more important for you as a consumer, for you as a partner, for us in mortgages and lending. So let's dive right in. Let's go to the article. All right, so we are on CNBC's article titled Fed Recap. Chair Powell explains why the central bank isn't ready yet to cut rates. So I like this. They actually do this format where it's kind of a timeline and it kind of works its way backwards. Um, and they talk about they summarize points that he made throughout the press conference and actually before the press conference leading up to it. So I'm gonna go ahead and work our way here. I only highlighted three sections, which kind of touches on what I want to talk about. And then again, like I said earlier, we're gonna go work our way backwards. We're gonna look at where mortgage rates are since that announcement, and then touch on inventory. So let's see where we're at on this article. The Federal Reserve held interest rates steady at their current range of 5.25 to 5.5%, but revised its outlook for rate cuts to just one in 2024. Central bank policymakers noted that there has been modest further progress towards its 2% inflation objective. Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell noted that at the press conference that the central bank does not yet have the confidence to cut rates, even as inflation has eased from its peak level. So let me see here. I think I'm getting some notifications, so I apologize about that. Let me go ahead. So basically, they just don't have the confidence to lower rates just yet, which again we'll touch on here in a minute. All right, too soon to tell if Fed policy is sufficiently restrictive, Powell says. The Federal Reserve restrictive stance on monetary policy is having the effect on inflation central banks had hoped to see, Fed Chair Jerome Powell said Wednesday afternoon. But central bankers are still waiting to see sufficient progress, he added. The question of whether it's significantly restrictive is going to be one we know over time, Powell said. But I think for the reasons I talked about at the last press conference and other places, I think the evidence is pretty clear that the policy is restrictive and is having, the effects that we would hope for. All right. Federal Reserve holds rates steady, predicts one rate cut this year. So I kind of touched on that the previous highlight up there. The central bank kept its key interest rates unchanged at a range of 5.25 to 5.5%, but two but took two rate cuts off the table for this year. The Federal Open Market Committee adjusted its rate forecast to one reduction this year, down from three in March. In recent months, there has been modest further progress towards the committee's 2% inflation objective, policymakers said in their statement. So that I kind of want to touch on here. So this section right here, I don't agree with this, where it says the central bank kept its key policy unchanged. Here, but to two rate cuts off the table for this year. So basically, these are forecasts that the Fed makes, and I know that the Fed sometimes says things, and the market either doesn't believe it, kind of ignores it, or they all in all the time. So one thing that Jerome Powell always says is like, we're gonna go by the data. Whatever the data says, that's how we're gonna move. We have to put a forecast, but it's basically what we think of what's gonna happen moving forward with the information that we have today. But again, if the numbers change come next meeting, guess what? Or even before then, guess what? Their forecast could change. So that they're saying they took it off. Yeah, they basically saying with the information that we have now, we are more leaning towards that one rate cut. But that doesn't mean that's where it's going to stand. So just wanted to touch on that. Now, how did these numbers affect mortgage rates or the lack of change in these numbers, right? The rates did not change. So let's go to, I'm going to jump to Mortgage News Daily's daily rate survey. Okay, and I'm going to touch on the 30-year and the FHA like we normally do here. 30-year fixed rate, they had it at 6.98, down 0.18% as of close yesterday. And the 30-year FHA is at 6.42, down 0.21. Getting old, man. I can't see. 0.21% as of beginning of the day yesterday and closing yesterday, of course. So this morning, and actually, let me just backtrack here for 1 second. This morning, they have actually a lot of red on the screen. The US 10-year Treasury yield is at 4.277, which is down 0.018 points and 0.149%. So it looks like the trend has continued, but compared to the 10-year Treasury yield. And one thing I wanted to touch on is we did have a drop in rates after the announcement throughout the day. But I personally, these are my personal opinions, is that whenever I see a big swing up or down, okay, especially when the Fed has not actually changed the rates, if that makes sense, if they would have changed the rates, right, or they would have announced next month we're going to cut the rates, right, basically the same thing, and the mortgage rates or the 10-year treasury yield drops or increases because of that, then it makes sense, right? Like it makes sense because there was actual movement. But I noticed that every time we go through this and the market and the Fed hasn't changed the rates, it's kind of like we go up and then it kind of balances back up and then it comes back down to where it was, generally speaking. Same thing. Nothing happened, rates go down, and for, again, my opinion, no forecast, I don't know what's going to happen, but again, I think there's going to be some rebalancing there, and it's going to most likely revert upward. Now, will it go back to where it was a couple days ago up here? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. Would it go up here? Who knows? Like it, but through this whole time, the Fed rates have not changed. It's just what the market predicts is going to happen. And the Fed is terrible at predicting these things, these forecasts. They're terrible. Yeah, they're good when they're kind of like this, but the minute either an inflation report comes out really high, and then these numbers kind of shoot up, or where something breaks in the economy, which we could go back in history and look, 2018, 2008, whenever the S&P, the savings and loan, sorry, crashed back in the 80s. Like all of these things, when they break, and the Fed has to come in, step in, and they got to lower the rates to kind of stop the bleeding, and hopefully help the market repair with that. So throw liquidity into the market. So anyway, um, the forecast, I really don't follow it. The Fed at the end of the day did not change the rates. So to the best of my thinking, because I don't know, I believe they're gonna still stay in this range that we've been over the last year. Sometimes a little bit higher, sometimes a little bit lower, but really no significant changes. So, and again, when it happens, we'll all know. We'll all know when that moment comes. All right. So let's go to the inventory. I'm not going to touch too much on this. Actually, I won't even speak about it, but I'll leave it right up here so you could see what yesterday's numbers were as of this morning and any changes. But so we'll continue following the market, kind of see where it goes, what interest rates do, if there's a reversion of interest rates, if it continues to go down, which would be great for our buyers and sellers. Again, sellers benefit from that as well. So other than that, I hope you found some value in this video. If you did, please don't forget to click that like button right over there and that subscribe button. And then also don't forget to click that little bell icon right there, that will remind you to watch that I've put out another video. In the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and leave that video right over here for you, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.